again, keep in mind, this is coming from Kamala Harris. This is on her video that she posted on her social media. Let's just get into it. Let's just get into it. I'm gonna press play.
So there's a big difference between equality and equity. Equality suggests, oh, everyone should get the same amount. The problem with that, not everybody's starting out from the same place. So if we're all getting the same amount, but you started out back there and I started out over here, we could get the same amount, but you're still gonna be that far back behind me.
Oh my God.
It's about giving people the resources and the support they need so that everyone can be on equal footing and then compete on equal footing. Equitable treatment means we all end up at the same place.
So remember, and I want to go through that final spot right there.
Equitable treatment means we all end up at the same place.
This woman that's literal communism. Okay, now potentially, more specifically, more precisely, Marxism. I know there are going to be people, well, she just means that if she misspeaking, okay, I'm just going off of what was literally advocated. That is communism. That's communism. This is the Marxist view on class. She's essentially advocating classlessness. Talking about we all ending up in the same place. First of all, why are we owed that? Unless you're a commie. But I was watching this and I'm like, they're masks. Speaking of mask, again, can we talk about Keith Olbermann's mask? So many twists and turns, like in terms of what makes the whole mask thing relevant right now. But they're letting their mask slip in terms of what they're advocating for. Right? And of course, because she's advocating this from a governmental position, all of this is going to be done by way of force. First of all, it's wrong on multiple fronts. The position itself, aside from it just being me just shouting, oh, Marxism or communism, let's discuss why this position is actually the incorrect position. It is a very dangerous position. Number one, you're not owed. Or number one, or this is more so number two, because I just said number two. How about we just stop numbering things and move on? But nobody's owed ending up in the same place, right? There's so many different factors that could go into that have to go into that. The starting point is part of it, right? Some people's parents put them in a better spot than they were. So they kind of start off down a more, just a better path, or rather further down the path than someone else who may have to grow up in poverty or grow up with a, let's say they were lesser off. Right. And when she talks about, and, you know, we'll play that really quick. Listen to what she says, talking about how she explains equity.
The problem with that, not everybody's starting out from the same place. So if we're all getting the same amount, but you started out back there and I started out over here, we could get the same amount, but you're still going to be that far back behind me.
So she's talking about, well, even if we did give you the same amount, then because this person was further along, they're going to still be in front, as if something's wrong with that, right? This is what I'm talking about when I talk about the whole communism or Marxism, rather, element or aspect. I can tell you why this is a dangerous thing, though, without having to mention that. Though it is communism, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing inherently wrong about someone starting or being in a better position. In fact, you should, I would argue, not that you should be forced, but I think it's an objectively good thing, at least in my honest opinion, that your kids or that next generation is better off than you. That's the world that I want to lead. Rather, when I do go that route, I want my kids to be put in a better position than I was as a kid. I want them to start off in a better position. I want to be able to leave I'm talking about that generational wealth, intergenerational wealth. I want to be able to leave that for my family. Right? Any rational person, definitely for those of you that are parents, that's what you want. You want your kid to be in a better situation than what you were in. And I'm just using this as an example. This isn't the only one. I'm just using this as an example. Whereas there's nothing wrong and it's not a crime for someone to be put in a better situation or to be in a better situation. But there's another thing that never, for whatever reason, gets mentioned. Definitely by the left, who speaks so much about privilege and wanting to use the government, or rather the state, to force people to give to other folks because they are going without. They look at you as if you're a fucking robot. They look at you as if every individual is a robot. You're a clean blank slate, right? Or rather, that's what they aspire for you to be. This is why she ends with, so we all end up in the same place. So yeah, you started ahead, but we got to give you more. We got to give this person behind you more additional resources so they can be where you're at. And to that I asked, why do they have to be where I'm at? Well, you started off in a better situation. So what? People move up and down classes all the time. Do you not know that? There's a significant portion of the population of millionaire population that were self-made. They don't talk to you about that because they always just say the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, because they only look at people as if they are like, again, numbers on a chart. And they don't even assess those numbers properly. Whereas the people move up and down economically. Rich people go from being less rich, right? People move up and down. People that were middle class become rich. People that were poor become rich. Happens all the time. Those aren't generally accounted for, though, right? But regardless, that is a thing that will never be rid of. Even if you were to try to, from a resource standpoint, allocate that, which is impossible. And of course, it leads to most destruction that we've ever seen in human history. Communism. These are what the Zedongs, the Maos of the world, the Pol Pots of the world, this is what they were advocating. Stalins of the world. And why they had to do some of the evil, corrupt things that not corrupt, just absolutely evil. They were really, really blatant about what it was that they were doing. But it was always in the name of the common good. It was always in the name of trying to better the society as a whole by having people on rather equal footing. Right? From the outcome. Right? So for those of you who like, I want equality of, which I hate the term equality. You know, nobody's equal. Like the great Thomas Sowell says, the same man isn't even equal to himself on different days. I hate the term equality anyway, even if it's of opportunity, right? But she's arguing for equality in terms of outcome. She has an entire cartoon animation dedicated to that. And her words say that. So we all end up in the same place. But of course, going back to the point, yeah, we know resources, if they are trying to be centrally planned in terms of how they are allocated, it always ends up in overages and shortages, famines, all of that stuff, because you can't possibly plan that out for millions of people. This is why we believe in markets, because we know the market is far more efficient in doing that. How can you get a handful of bureaucrats to allocate resources better than, let's say, I allocate the resources for myself? But most importantly, regardless of resources, we are individuals. Every individual is an individual. And what that means is that we are going to differ. And this is why, before I say this is why when it comes to homelessness, when it comes to poverty, I am not as willing to say that, well, the poor, and you treat them as if they are this monolithic block of helpless people who need your assistance. Bull crap. I say this as someone who has family that's in poverty, and I say this as someone who had a father who's still alive, but ain't worth a goddamn. Some people's own actions, which is the most important thing that communists will never account for whatever reason, is that we differ because we're individuals. We differ in action. We are not equal. I know that people love that term mainly because of the civil rights era and equality. But equality, and in terms of how she's using it, especially in an equitable standpoint, where how she's using the word equity, it is a nonsensical, evil term because it robs individuals of their identity, their personal individuality, rather. We act differently. There's nothing wrong with that. Because we act, we have different motivations, we have different actions. We'll never be equal. We're not supposed to be. We're not supposed to be. We're not supposed to be. Who's to say that we're supposed to be equal? Who's to say we're supposed to end up in the same place? We're not. And I know that this is why I don't treat poor people and people in poverty like they're monolithic. Because I've seen people get into poverty by their own stupid doing. Rather, they put themselves there where they're broke now because of what they did themselves, not some evil white man behind the corner controlling puppets and stuff. They got there by way of their own personal action, or more importantly, inaction. Not taking advantage of their opportunities. I've seen this happen too much. I'm from the game. Right? I grew up in a similar situation as y'all. Actually, I grew up in arguably a worse situation because my mother and my father were married, and we weren't rich by any means, but we would have been considered more middle class when I was born. Then my parents split, and I went from being in a house to being in an apartment in South Dallas. Right? I had to experience that, to go from that, sleeping on a nice bed, to sleeping on this bed with slacks and stuff that I was in the middle of the night where the slacks would come off. And I'm sitting like caved in the damn bed. Yeah. Not having multiple pairs of shoes, or wearing the same shoes from the years prior that were dirty as I don't know what. Mama working 2 jobs to just provide for me and let me be able to do something. Yeah, that's what I had to experience. That's why I'm not willing to let people make it. So I don't treat people as if they're robots and they all act the same. They don't. This is what communism, for whatever reason, not for whatever reason, there's reason why, but a lot of leftists who wouldn't dare say they're communists, understandably so. But that's the position that they adopt, which is why they treat people such like monolithic blocks, because they can't see the fact that, well, people are different in action. They look at rich person, poor person, right? Bad, good. So automatically, if you're a poor person, you got there by way of some injustice, right? Being done to you. There's nothing that you possibly could have did to put yourself in that situation. Not to say there aren't people who just got the short end of the stick. It happens. And I'm not against, of course, helping those people unless you do it involuntarily. And of course, I'm against that. But the act in itself, voluntarily help whoever it is that you want. You've seen churches and stuff be leading the charge over the years when it comes to feeding kids that need to be fed, when it comes to poverty and fighting it. I'm all for it being voluntary. But this whole nonsensical act is a dangerous act, but that's what they want to do, rob you of your individuality. They want to treat you as if you're not responsible for your own life. The state is, you're not. Yes, there will be people that will come into the earth out of their mama's womb in a better economic position than others. It happens. That doesn't mean that there's automatically a crime that exists, nor does it mean that this person needs to be given more because of that. involuntarily, of course. That's what they advocate. But I wanted to show y'all that video, and I wanted to speak on this whole notion of, oh, well, we may give you the same amount of this person, but y'all may not end up in the same place because you started off in a worse position. And people look at that as if that's a negative thing. Inequality is the default. And this is why it's so crazy that people speak as if equality is something, number one, that's even achievable, or something that's worth achieving. We're not equal. We're not. I'm not equal to myself, like Thomas Sowell says on different days. You and I are not equal beings. Why would we end up in the same place? Even if we started at the same place, we wouldn't end up in the same place because we're different people. Other things can go into it too. Geography, all kinds of things. This is countless amount of things that do lend itself even to its individuality, or people's individuality, that would warrant them being in different spots than the person next to them. But we're not equal beings. We're not supposed to be. It should be an expectation, a default, that there will be inequality. Some of that is unjust in terms of how it gets to, but the hilarious thing is they're not advocating for solutions to that. They're not talking about getting rid of the Federal Reserve. They're not talking about abolishing taxes or tax laws, rather. They're not talking about abolishing business licensing and stuff like that. They're not talking about, or by way of the state, obviously. They're not discussing any of that crap. That's not what it is they want. Occupational licensing and stuff, minimum wages, things. If anything, they advocate things that hurt particularly and more specifically poor people from getting out of their own economic situations. But at the end of the day, individuality, of course, people are obligated, if you will, to acknowledge their own individuality before they fall slave to the group. I hate when people say things like Kamala Harris said. It's an objectively bad thing. It's a nonsensical thing that we all should end up at the same place. No, we shouldn't. Some of us maybe will. Some may get there before other people get there. But it's an inevitable thing, even if you did somehow find a way to allocate resources, which is not going to happen ever. Make no mistake. Matter of fact, I'm not even going to make the point I was just going to make, because that's not even worth talking about. When we talk about allocating resources, like, no, you can't centrally plan that. And historically, it's been an absolute disaster. It's a disaster when it's done still here. Don't get it twisted. There's a lot of socialistic bullcrap going on in America. We're not all supposed to end up in the same place.